We begin the day with the imposter running for U.S. president and the two old men standing in her way. In a nutshell, this is the state of the race for the White House, in the words of two Republicans, Nikki Haley and Donald Trump, hoping to unseat the incumbent Democrat Joe Biden. On Tuesday, Donald Trump won the New Hampshire primary, beating Nikki Haley by a margin of about 10 to 11 points. Haley did not concede defeat, however. Instead, she doubled down on her campaign mantra that both Trump and Biden, closer to the age of 80 than the age of 70, no longer fit the bill to be U.S. president. She's pinning her hopes on the next primary in her home state of South Carolina. Well, on Tuesday night, Trump lashed out at Haley, calling her an imposter, weak on immigration, tough on protecting the status quo in Washington, a claim Republicans in South Carolina are apparently buying. State polls show Trump with a comfortable lead over Haley.
She might be down, but she isn't out. After a day of voting in this tense presidential primary, Haley insists that her loss in New Hampshire doesn't spell the end game.
New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over.
And her supporters are sticking with her.
It's not over until it's over. She's going to keep fighting. South Carolina is the next state. That's her home state.
So, I mean, again, if she wins South Carolina in her home state, she's going to show a lot of people that she should be in this race and she's going to move forward from there.
But the night's victory speech belonged to Donald Trump.
Well, I want to thank everybody. This is a fantastic state. This is a great, great state. You know, we won New Hampshire 3 times now. Three.
His supporters have little doubt that the former president deserves another term.
I voted for Donald Trump, which made the day extra awesome for me. It's a special day, and I'm proud to be here, and I'm glad that we're in the first primary in the United States.
I think that the people that are Republicans see that Trump needs to be back in office.
Haley vows to fight on, but her path to victory looks increasingly narrow, while a Trump-Biden rematch this November appears ever more likely.
All right, well, joining me here in the studio now is Brandon Bohrn. He's with the Bertelsmann Foundation, where he is with the Foundation's Europe's Future program, and he is also from the good state of South Carolina, I understand. Brandon, it's good to have you with us. I mean, so let's put you into this story. You're an American. You're working on this project about Europe's future. So what would a second Trump presidency, what would it mean for Europe's future?
It would mean quite a lot, and I think that's something that Europeans really have to wake up to. That is a potential reality that's really just around the corner. The time is going by quickly. All you have to do is take a look at the Heritage Foundation's plans for, in their Project 2025, which is an unprecedented presidential administration transition plan. Mm-hmm. If you look at the Mandate for Leadership, which is essentially the leading document as a part of this project, it outlines very clearly what Republican policy ambitions are when it comes to energy policy, trade policy, security. It would have severe impacts for Europeans.
So it would be similar to what we saw the first term, just more of it and more hardcore.
I think it would be significantly worse. When you look at, for example, if you look at the trade chapters, these are written by Peter Navarro, who was a former trade advisor to Trump. He's one of the only advisors who lasted the entire presidency from 2017 to 2021. If you look at the language that's included there, they believe that they did not have the right people in place the first time around in order to really get Trump's agenda off the ground. They're making plans now to put the right people in place.
Well, we know that a lot can happen between now and November. So let's look at where things stand right now. So Trump beat Haley in New Hampshire. The margin was smaller than expected, 10, 11 points. How do you read that?
I think it was to be anticipated to a certain degree. All signs pointed to Trump walking away from New Hampshire with a victory. Of course, if you look at it just on paper, yes, she experienced a big bump. But if you take a step back, there are a few things at play. If you go back to the Iowa caucus last week, of course, we had 3 candidates in the race. Ron DeSantis dropped out of that race pretty quickly thereafter. That's one thing. The other important thing to consider is the state of New Hampshire itself. It's a very different state than Iowa. And honestly, it's a bit of an oddball in that region of New England. For example, it's highly politically diverse for the region. For example, if you look at the U.S. Senate, you have 2 Democratic senators in Maggie Hassan and Jeanne Shaheen. I was a former staff. I spent a bit of time in Jeanne Shaheen's staff several years ago. You then have a Republican governor in Chris Sununu. So you don't see that very often. That's very uncommon.
And apparently Donald Trump was expecting Nikki Haley last night to follow Ron DeSantis' lead and to throw in the towel. But she didn't do that, and Trump was visibly ticked off by this. Take a listen to what he said last night.
This is not your typical victory speech, but let's not have somebody take a victory when she had a very bad night. She had a very bad night. I said, I can go up and I can say to everybody, oh, thank you for the victory, it's wonderful, or I can go up and say, who the hell was the imposter that went up on the stage before and claimed a victory? She did very poorly, actually. But the only person more angry than, let's say, me, but I don't get too angry, I get even.
So I could say the candidate doth protest too much, methinks. I mean, how do you read? I mean, he was irate.
I read into it like what you've seen over the past several years. I mean, did you notice who's behind him? It's Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina. He's not standing behind Nikki Haley on stage raising her hand saying, we're going to South Carolina together and we're going to pull this thing through. No, he's standing behind Trump during his victory speech.
Did that surprise you? I mean, you're from South Carolina. I mean,
I am a born and raised South Carolinian, so it did not, because, a case that you can look at is, I mean, it says a lot about the Republican Party.
Well, both of your senators are Donald Trump men, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, to a certain extent, if you look at Lindsey Graham, for example, he's a perfect example of what I think Nikki Haley is experiencing now. Back in 2015 and 2016, he came out fervently against Trump when he was then candidate. He's come out against him several times during his presidency. He's known for seesawing on his positions notoriously. But what you see is it still has very strong consequences for Lindsey Graham's base in South Carolina. Even recently, there was a rally down in South Carolina where he was essentially booed off stage and Trump had to come down and calm the crowd.
Unbelievable.
Of course, he took advantage of the moment and said, poor Lindsey, you were lost, but now you're found.
He's like the Messiah.
No, it's not a surprise.
I want you to take a listen to what Nikki Haley said last night when the numbers came in.
With Donald Trump, you have one bout of chaos after another. For a lot of people, politics is way too personal. It's not personal for me. I voted for Trump twice. I decided to run because I'm worried about the future of our country and because it's time to put the negativity and chaos behind us.
All right, so that seems reasonable, but we know that the stakes are going to be even higher for her in South Carolina. Now, she was a 2-term governor of South Carolina. She should have the home state advantage there, but the opinion polls show that she doesn't. Why is that?
Well, it's for a number of reasons. Again, it speaks to the state of the Republican Party. This is still very much Trump's party. And, when she goes to South Carolina, I mean, honestly, I think looking at New Hampshire, she was probably in friendlier territory among Republicans in New Hampshire than what awaits her in South Carolina next month. Look at of course, you mentioned the polls. I think Trump is at about 62% right now. He experienced a big bump in the last few days here. That's way better than what he was experiencing going into New Hampshire this week. Look at the South Carolina state leadership. You've got Governor McMaster, you've got the upper echelon of South Carolina's state government standing on stage with Trump at recent rallies, not only endorsing Trump, but actively speaking out against Nikki Haley's campaign.
And that's despite the fact that South Carolinians voted twice for her to be their governor.
That's true. I think her support possibly waned over time before she went on to become UN ambassador, but it's true.
If we end up having a rematch of Donald Trump and Joe Biden in November, it will happen against the wishes of the American people. I mean, all of the polls show us that a majority of Americans do not want to see this rematch, but that's what we're going to get, probably. In your work, how do you explain this to Europeans, particularly when on both sides of the Atlantic you have this claim now that the system is broken and that the politicians don't speak for us anymore?
Well, unfortunately, in the United States, if you look at public opinion polling on several policy issues, whether it be abortion, whether it be gun regulation, unfortunately, the wishes of the American people are not always translated into policy. So it's unfortunately just a fact of the matter. When we're explaining to Europeans now, especially in the context of the election, the focus is primarily on the policy objectives of a potential Republican administration coming in January 2025. That is very much the focus and something that we're trying to really bring home.
Are you hearing people say here in Europe that they don't want to see Trump as president again, as much as they're saying that they would prefer that there was another choice other than Joe Biden?
Well, I mean, if you look at New Hampshire, again, kind of a strange scenario, how this primary, well, it was an unsanctioned primary, took place. It says a lot that Joe Biden was not on the ballot and a grassroots campaign pushed, I mean, literally individuals had to write his name onto ballots in order for him to be...
Yeah, his name wasn't on the ballot because of some clash with the Democrat National Committee.
It's a longer story, but exactly. So he still walked away with 51% of the vote, and I think that actually is a strong sign that, you know, there's still support there.
So would you say that your state, South Carolinians, are going to say yes to Trump, no to Nikki Haley?
I believe so.
Okay. Brandon Bohrn with the Bertelsmann Foundation. Good to have you here in the studio with us. Thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.